Blue Man Group, take one. Take two.
And so we think especially about how we started, basically just, the three of us saying, why don't we get bald and blue and do stuff.
Truthfully, the first thing the Blue Man Group ever did as an organized group of people was write a press release, which is why I always think the conversations about if we do too much marketing or if we're overly relying on marketing, I think is so funny because we were marketing from the first moment of our existence. And so they sent out this press release, and it must have been a slow news day because Kurt Loder picked it up.
They called it a funeral for the 80s, and as you can see, it was an art event. It was mounted by a collective of New York artists who call themselves the Blue Man Group.
There was nobody there. If you did anything in Central Park, you would attract a couple of passerbys who would stop and just watch you for a few minutes.
I thought it was a good idea and somebody needed to do it.
But the way they shot it, they made it look like there was this huge event, and they made it look like there were hundreds of people there. So it worked out. It must have been a slow news day for MTV. I'm not sure.
In the history of Blue Man, there's one thing that does kind of ring home with me is I kind of started as a street performer and working in street theater, guerrilla theater, when I was a youngster in the early days of my theater career. The fact that Blue Man kind of comes from that as its roots really appeals to me. It's a lot about what I liked about theater in the first place.
We sort of got to go way, way back to when it was just the three of us, and then we started adding, and there was a lot of the early days gets romanticized, like, oh, those good old days, and some of them were good, but a lot of them were really sucky. And, you think back to King Tut's Wawa Hut, for example, in 1989. It held 45 people. It's not there anymore. It was on 7th Street and Avenue A. It was not sold out.
Phil made a vortex machine out of a washing machine, the first one, and it leaked everywhere.
It did. And then he fixed it. He fixed it 4 times.
We used to use it theatrically in the show to make Jell-O. We would pour, we had an oversized box of Jell-O, and we would act like we were pouring Jell-O into the top of it. It was really dyed, so it would change in color. I would turn a valve, and it would go out of that. It would look like it was going into this Jell-O mold, and people actually bought it sometimes.
We had one particularly kind of dead moment in that Wawa Hut show, which was we took, for the first time, we got the rolls of paper, and we unrolled them and wrote text on them. And then we re-rolled it, and then we held them. And
3 different rolls.
And we were just going to push the rolls out a little bit at a time, but what happened was they just started going on their own, and it went faster than anyone could read. And so everyone in the audience was just going like this, and there was no music. And but that was the birth of paper rolls. Eventually, about 10 or 20 iterations later. So it's interesting.
And that was the show that a guy that Chris and Phil worked with in catering came up to us at the end of the show and said,
we asked him, did you like this? What'd you think?
Yeah, and he said, you guys are brave.
I also really dig the fact that Chris, Matt, and Phil kind of started out this little company as kind of like just this little theater company that could.